Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Martha Alter Hines with Living the One Light. So this is going to be a video that follows up from a video I posted yesterday about the Saturn-Jupiter square that's happening in 2024 and 2025. And in the first video, if you want to hear more of the details of what is Jupiter, what is Saturn, and what are all the dates of all these transits happening, go back to that video to hear all those details, but you can also just start right here. And in this video, I'm going to go through all the rising signs. In other words, I'm going to talk about how this might feel for you, given what your ascendant sign is. And I'm going to give a humongous caveat, which I spoke to yesterday, but I'm going to say it again. I've never made a video like this, even though lots and lots of astrologers do, because it's not this simple, right? It's just not. And so I've just shied away from doing it. But for some reason, I don't know, I decided I wanted to, and hey, it would be fun to try it out. And you guys tell me, is it helpful or not helpful? And in what way is helpful? Or if I do this again, is there a certain thing that you would like me to do differently or repeat, or, just trying it out, like, why not? So, but the big caveat again is that it's not this simple. And even if I talk about your rising sign, when I talk about your rising sign, because I'll talk about all of them, it may or may not resonate, because I'll show you that, for example, right now, I have Saturn in my 7th house, right? I have Virgo rising, and therefore Saturn in Pisces is in my 7th house, but Saturn is also right on my sun. So what's really getting highlighted for me, certainly my 7th house with Saturn, but it's also really extra highlighting my sun. I'm feeling it more in my sun than in my 7th house, if that makes sense, because if you have these planets on these planets on one of, especially your personal planets, that's probably what you're going to be feeling even more than the house. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the houses, not because I can't know, where your planets are, but given your rising sign, I can have a guess of what houses these planets are going to be falling in for you. And I'm also going to talk about the variation of how that'll be, because you might have, let's say, Aries rising, but I'm going to talk about where these planets would fall if you have like 0 degrees Aries rising. I can't talk about like every single degree of your rising sign. And anyway, depending on the house system you use and everything, it's going to be really, really different. So these planets are moving. So in reality, they're not actually probably only staying in one of your houses. They're actually probably moving between 2 of your houses. So I'll try to bring that in a little bit, but so hold this all really lightly. That's what I'm saying. It's just, this is an experiment. I'll let it try to be fun, and yeah, see what resonates and see what doesn't, and tell me. I really want to know. So we're doing this together. Awesome. Okay, so just to recap really, really briefly, again, go back to the first video if you want to hear more of the details of Saturn, Jupiter, what's going on, and the nodes of the moon. But on a basic level, in 2024 and 2025, we have Saturn squaring Jupiter, or Jupiter squaring Saturn 3 times total. The first time was August 19th, 2024. The second time was yesterday. I'm recording this on October 10th, 2024. So no, oh my goodness. Yesterday, Jupiter went retrograde. Never mind. The second Jupiter Saturn square will be December 24th, 2024. And then the third square will be the middle of June, 2025. So we're in the middle of these 3 Jupiter Saturn squares. And what I feel in that, again, go back to the other video to hear more, essentially is that in one area of our life, or in our life in general, there's this Jupiterian energy happening, which often can feel like expansion or like new possibilities are opening and that kind of thing. And then squaring that is Saturn. So at the same time, we're probably also feeling a sense of like, I'm expanding in this way, but I'm feeling sort of pulled back in another way to Saturn. The ultimate intention that I feel in Saturn is to bring us back to our wisdom, our own wise self. So Jupiter might give us all these options and these possibilities, or we might feel really called to do, new things or whatever it is. But then Saturn is helping us go, okay, cool. Let's not get carried away by that. Let's really drop in and deeply align, ground, and find what's in alignment before we choose how we want to move with those possibilities that maybe Jupiter is helping us to open up to. And then in addition, the nodes of the moon are also playing into this. So again, go back to that video to see more. But the bottom line is that right now, Saturn is in the mid degrees of Pisces, and a year from now, the North Node will be right there. So the big picture of what I feel with this is that for us, especially those of us who have very, very strong placements in the mid to end degrees of the mutable signs, which is Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Gemini, our charts are being really highlighted by this whole dynamic. And at the moment we have, Jupiter helping us expand the sort of more Gemini areas of our life, Saturn helping us to ground and come into our wisdom in that Pisces area of our life. And then the North Node a year from now will be right where Saturn is now. So it's like this dance of Jupiter and Saturn is helping to prepare us for the North Node, the transit of the North Node, which will help to support us in our soul calling. That's overly simplified, but that's the gist of what I feel looking at that whole set of transits with these mid degrees of the mutable signs. So, okay. So let's go through the houses. And again, when astrologers make these videos and they say, Jupiter for every sign or something like that, what they're really talking about almost always is your rising sign, not your sun sign. I think that's often confusing. It's been confusing for me. I often think, oh, they're talking about, okay, I need to look at the part where they're talking about Pisces because my sun is in Pisces. Actually, what they're almost certainly talking about is actually your rising sign. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. So if you happen to know your rising sign, pay attention, especially to that part of this video. That's your ascendant, right? It's the part of the sky that was rising at the moment you were born on the eastern horizon. Yeah. So, okay, let's dive in. Okay. Okay. So this shows what the transits are probably like for you if you have Aries rising. And I'm going to start with this and take this one a little bit more slowly so I can give you some information that's relevant to all of the signs. So like I said, this is showing 0 degrees Aries as the rising degree. But you might have Aries rising and it might be 0. It's very rare. I mean, it's incredibly rare that I run across people who have 0 degrees rising sign of anything. But you might have 0 degrees Aries rising. Chances are, though, you have it in one of the other 29 degrees, right? There's a 29 degrees in every single sign. So you might have 19 degrees Aries rising, or you might have 29 degrees Aries rising. And that is going to make a big difference in where all of this is going to fall in your chart. So I'm just going to show you this really quick. So for example, if you have the 0 degrees of Aries rising, then your chart, the transits for you will have the North Node sitting in your first house, and Chiron sitting in your first house, and Saturn in Pisces in your 12th house, and Jupiter in your third house, right? But let's say you're born with instead of 0 degrees Aries, let's pretend you have 23 degrees Aries rising. Then that shifts the transits for you pretty significantly. It shifts things an entire house. So instead of the North Node being and Chiron being in your first house, it actually might be in your 12th house. With Saturn, instead of Saturn being in your 12th house, it's actually maybe in your 11th house. And Jupiter in this case would still be in your third house, but it might go back into your second house, right? If you have like 29 degrees Aries rising. So what I would say is when you're listening to what I'm about to talk about, pay attention to the sign that I'm naming that's your own rising sign, but also pay attention to the following one. So if you, let's say you have Aries rising, but it's not 0 degrees Aries rising, also listen to what I'm talking about with Taurus rising, because that might actually be closer to true for you. And if you know how to look up your transits on a chart, then you'll know which houses these transits are falling in for you. But if you don't have a way to look it up easily, then listen to your rising sign and then the next one also. And an easy way to look at charts actually is AstroGold on if you have an Apple phone or iPad. That's what I use. This is AstroGold. This is on my laptop, so this is more expensive, but the app on iPhone or iPad is not very expensive and really, 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 gives you pretty much everything you need. Okay. So, so again, okay. Let's start here with Aries rising. Okay. So I'm going to highlight just a few basic things for each of the signs. So if you have Aries rising, probably Saturn is in your 12th house while Jupiter is in your third house. So you would be theoretically maybe getting a sense of expansion in Gemini in your third house, and Gemini in third house. If you have Aries rising, then all the signs and the houses actually double themselves. So so for you, maybe you tell us, like, tell me whether these things resonate or not. I'm actually really curious. But theoretically, you might be getting a sense of expansion around learning, around like maybe you just want to learn everything right now and you just want to pick up all different kinds of ways of learning. And then at the same time, you would be having Neptune and Saturn in Pisces in your 12th house, which would be really possibly really deeply aligning you with your own relationship with the divine. So maybe part of what could be going on for you is a sense of, hey, I love learning all this stuff with my mind. And at the same time, I'm feeling really deeply called to ground in to my way of knowing this directly from the divine, or maybe bringing structure, Saturn, to how I connect with the divine, or something along those lines, right? Right. And then maybe there's a way you're feeling called to combine the two, like your excitement about learning, but then also your own personal relationship with the divine. And another thing going on for you, probably, if you have Aries rising, is that you're getting really supported by the nodes of the moon, which are in your south node in 7th house and north node in your first house. You might be feeling really called to release your sense of being focused on the needs of others and really coming in deeply into what do I need? What is my truth? What is my way? And if you have Aries rising, you either just did or are about to have the nodes of the moon cross your ascendant and descendant. So again, that could be highlighting this dance between your connection with yourself and connection with others. And you're probably especially given that you have Aries rising, chances are pretty high that you're having a strong sense of, wow, I need to really work on, I really need to learn this whole concept of knowing myself, knowing my own needs. And maybe possibly you've lived a lot of your life focused on the needs of others. Now, this would depend on all the rest of your chart, right? But maybe you've lived a life where you, especially people who identify as women, girls, have been raised as girls with an Aries rising chart, or just any chart, but wouldn't surprise me if you're listening to this video, you're somebody who's really been trained to listen to the needs of others. And now with these transits, possibly you're having a really strong sense of, hey, I've got to do this for myself. Like I need to live a time now that's really about me. Okay. So that's Aries rising. Let's move to Taurus rising, which might apply for those of you with Aries rising, especially if you have later degrees of Aries rising, okay? And again, please share with us, what resonates, what doesn't. Okay, so here's Taurus rising. So if you have Taurus rising, chances are good, or if you have late degrees of Aries rising, chances are good that Saturn is in your 11th house, Jupiter's in your second house. Okay, so Jupiter being in your second house, there might be, and actually Uranus might be there in your second house too. So there might be, have been, and currently is a very strong emphasis in some way on your finances or on your how you are surviving, like your sense of how you're going to get your basic needs met, how you're going to survive, and your own sense of values, everything along those lines. And you have Taurus rising. So Taurus rising also, I mean, the second house is a Taurus energy as well. And so you have Taurus rising plus Jupiter and Uranus transiting your second house. So you have a lot of energy going on in the sky for you right now that is reflecting your rising sign energy, actually. And so there could be a really strong emphasis of new learning for you around, yeah, how do I want to be in relationship to money? How do I want to be in relationship to resources? How do I want to be in relationship to things that help me feel comfortable? Even my nervous system. Your nervous system could be really highlighted right now. And how can I get the needs of my nervous system met? And then you would have Saturn squaring Jupiter in Pisces in your 11th house. So, I mean, I'm stereotyping here, but there could be a sense of possibly coming into new structures or a new way of relating, new boundaries with regard to groups, with regard to society, culture, how you relate to, community, friendship groups, even depending on the kind of work you do, if you put yourself out there in the media, maybe there's a way that you're feeling called to put structures in place for that. And that might be playing in somehow to your relationship with money and resources and all of that. And then for you, the nodes of the moon would be transiting right now your 6th house and your 12th house. So south node in 6th house, north node in 12th house. And there'd be this really strong emphasis, perhaps, of you maybe learning how to release a sense of, I want to say, criticism and a lot of healing potential, especially with Chiron here in your 12th house also, and Neptune in your 12th house. I mean, all this emphasis in your 12th house of really releasing into trust in the divine and a sense of faith. And maybe like this whole picture could be a sense that you are feeling like there's a really deep learning again about, again, because your rising sign is Taurus. So a really deep learning right now for you around, yeah, what do I need to feel safe? And what do I thought I need XYZ to feel safe and to feel comfortable, but maybe there's a new way. Maybe there's a new way for me to ground in and align with the truth of the divine. So that's Uranus there in Taurus, either in your 2nd house or your 1st house. Okay, so that kind of sums up the Taurus rising energy and also possibly the end of Aries rising. All right, now let's move to Gemini rising. Okay, so Gemini rising for you, Jupiter has been doing some really interesting things. This year, Jupiter will have crossed your ascendant. So, I mean, if you have a Gemini rising anywhere between 0 degrees of Gemini and 21 degrees of Gemini, Jupiter has already crossed your ascendant this year. If you have Gemini rising anywhere from 11 to 21 degrees of Gemini, Jupiter is going to cross your ascendant 2 more times. So it's not done. And if you have Gemini rising from 21 to 29 degrees of Gemini, then you haven't had, 22 to 29 degrees of Gemini. Jupiter hasn't yet crossed your ascendant, but it's going to early next year. So Jupiter crossing the ascendant is a pretty big deal. So if you have Gemini rising, Jupiter is really, really significant for you right now. And that Jupiter crossing the ascendant could be an energy that really brings a sense of completion, beginning, any kind of like a big energy that frees things up in a way that can bring in new possibilities for you, and maybe brings in a sense of, you wanting to do this differently, or you wanting your identity getting really highlighted in a way that there's like a new sense of identity coming through or something along those lines. Okay, hang on one second. Okay. Another really significant thing, if you have Gemini rising, especially the early degrees of Gemini and the end degrees of Taurus, you are, if you have the end, if you're rising, if your ascendant is at the end degrees of Taurus, you have Uranus sitting on your ascendant. If your ascendant is, 0, 1, 2 degrees of Gemini, first of all, the Pleiades were rising when you were born. So if you have 29, if your rising sign is 28, 29 of Taurus or 0, 1, 2 of Gemini, you had Pleiades, the Pleiades right on your ascendant when you were rising. That's just really beautiful and something you might want to feel into. You might feel really called to the Pleiades at some point if you haven't already. But Uranus is going to be conjunct the Pleiades coming up this coming year. And so if your ascendant is in those degrees, Uranus is sitting right on your ascendant, or it's about to be. So in addition to Jupiter crossing your ascendant recently, you have Uranus there, like almost like a lightning bolt, just like lighting it up. And so really, really supporting you to align and to ground in so deeply with who am I really and what is truly in alignment for me on the highest divine truth sense. So that's a big deal. If you have, ascendant anywhere from 28 of Taurus to 2-3 of Gemini this coming year, that'll be very, very highlighted by Uranus. Plus it would just had Jupiter cross over it. Okay. Then at the same time, if you have a Gemini rising, you probably have Saturn transiting your 10th house and your 11th house. And so at the same time that you have this whole sense of your identity being expanded, being really, given kind of like a new lease on life, is that the way to say it? You also have very strong support for you to bring structure in the real world, in society, for that truth of who you are. You might also be feeling a kind of a sense of confusion, like maybe you would be feeling a sense that you need to conform somehow to society, and so there might be an internal kind of back and forth with, like, I'm feeling so called to be me in a whole new way, and yet I need to conform to society. And how do I do that? That could be a dance going on inside of you. But what's really interesting and cool is that if that's the case, regardless of whether that's the case, if you have Gemini rising, chances are the South Node is in your 5th house and the North Node is in your 11th house, which would potentially be really supporting you to hone the creative life force of your own being, 5th house, and then bring that into kind of manifestation in your own unique way, in society, in community, 11th house. So if you have Gemini rising, there could be just this really strong sense of like, wow, I need to be me in a whole new way. And I have this gold I can mine in the creative life force that is me. And now I can bring it into the world in my own unique way. And that might be feeling scary. Like when I feel into this in my body, I can feel how it could be feeling really scary. It could be feeling, there could be a sense of old traumas, even from other lives coming up. And yet it's okay to do it. Like you're in this time of your life now here where it is okay to be who you really are. And in lots and lots of past lives, probably maybe it wasn't, right? So again, this is stereotyping, but this is definitely a strong energy that could be there for you if you have Gemini rising or the end degrees of Taurus rising. Okay, let's move on to Cancer rising. All right. So if you have Cancer rising, then Jupiter is definitely has been in your, or is in your 12th house. Uranus also probably is in your 12th house, maybe your 11th house. And Jupiter next year will be crossing your ascendant. Well, depending on, okay, if you're in the first section of Cancer rising, Jupiter will be crossing your ascendant. So everything I just said about Jupiter crossing the ascendant, that would apply to you as well. Although Uranus is far, far, far away from your ascendant. So the Uranian energy wouldn't be so strong for you in terms of your ascendant. But you would be having right now Jupiter and Uranus activating your 12th house, which might be a really strong sense of expansion around your connection with the divine, maybe your own way of communicating as the divine or with the divine, or you might be getting even a strong sense that you want to channel, possibly, or write. Maybe you feel called to channel, writings of the divine, maybe. Gemini in your 12th house. Yeah. And then at the same time, you probably have or have been having or will have Saturn crossing your midheaven. So going back and forth between your 9th house and your 10th house. So really, and you have the North Node in your 10th house. So really, really strong support for you to be bringing into a concrete structure your soul calling, your connection to spirit, Pisces. So there might be this really strong expansion in terms of your relationship with the divine, and maybe you feel called to channel, or whatever it is. And at the same time, you might be getting really supported, or maybe you could be if you kind of focus in a particular way, of having the Saturnian structures there for you in place so that you can bring that new way of being with the divine into form in the world. And North Node transiting your 10th house also, really maybe supporting you to show it up, to show it in the world, and to bring it into form that society needs and that is very 3D. Yeah. Okay. And I'll also say, if you want to take this one layer deeper with all of the rising signs, you can also look at where, what's going on with the ruler of that sign. So Aries, you could be looking at what is Mars doing? Where is Mars transiting things for you? I'm not going to get into that in this video because it's already going to be really, really long. But, Taurus, you could be looking at where is Venus, what's going on with Venus in your chart. Gemini, you could be looking at Mercury, and then Cancer rising, what's going on with your moon, because your moon rules your ascendant. Okay. So then let's go to Leo rising. Oops, wrong. I clicked the wrong button. 1 second. Sorry. Okay. All right. So Leo rising or N degrees of Cancer rising. All right. So if you have Leo rising, chances are you have Jupiter transiting your 11th house and Uranus either in your 10th house or your 11th house. And you might have Chiron transiting your midheaven with the nodes of the moon currently in your 3rd and 9th houses and Saturn in your 8th house. You also, depending on the degree of your Leo ascendant, you either have Pluto transiting your descendant, or if you or coming up soon, Pluto might be transiting your descendant. Okay, so And that's actually true also if you have end degrees of Cancer rising, then you absolutely have recently had Pluto transiting your descendant. Or if you have 29-degree Cancer rising, Pluto's sitting on your descendant right now. Okay, so what does that all mean? Well, so let's drop into that. If you have Leo ascendant, Jupiter and possibly Uranus are really highlighting your 11th house. So really highlighting, how, like, maybe expanding ways in which you have opportunities to be doing new ways of being with society, with community, with groups, with your own unique way of showing up in the world. And then at the same time, if you have Chiron on your midheaven, which it's hard to know without looking at your exact chart, there could be a really strong sense of healing going on for you around how you are called to show up in the world. And then Saturn, which is squaring Jupiter, right? Over and over again this year, would be in Pisces in your 8th house. So possibly there could be a really strong sense of deep karmic healing, like unearthing of karmic patterning from this lifetime and maybe infinite lifetimes, that as you are able to be releasing those deep karmic patternings, you then can move into these expanded ways of being in society. So, and again, it's hard to speak to exactly what that means for you because I don't know your chart and talking really generally here. If you have Pluto on your descendant, which again would be true for you if you have the end degrees, the rising sign at the very end of Cancer or the very, very beginning of Leo, then Pluto on your descendant also could be really helping you to dissolve, to let go of, to transform your sense of relating to others. So again, there could be a really deep, powerful releasing and letting go of karmic patterning, specifically with regard to power dynamics and and your relationship with others, like how dynamics show up in relation to others. And then interestingly, the nodes of the moon might be really supporting you in in terms of your own calling as a teacher or a leader, or how you learn things, how you teach things. So 3rd and 9th houses, right? So there could be a dynamic going on for you just around, like you might be feeling on the one hand, this deep dissolving of all these the patterns that I've come into this life with and that I've been living out this life with. And yet I know that on a deep level, I am a teacher of some kind, or I am called to show up in the world in a new way. And there's some pretty powerful healing going on for me around how I'm called to show up in the world. Again, especially if you have this Chiron on your midheaven, that might be really, really true. And then after I do this dissolving of these karmic patterns, then maybe it would be more clear to me how I'm called to show up in the world as the teacher, as the, all of that. Yeah, and to really bring out my own creative life force gifts, Leo rising. Because if you have Leo rising, I mean, you're probably may or may not be overt, but you probably have a lot of creative life force that's needing to come out in the world, and that you're in this lifetime, you're really learning a new way of being with that. Okay. Now let's go to Virgo rising. So I have Virgo rising. So what I'm about to say is it's true for Virgo rising, and it's also true for the end degrees of Leo rising, probably. Okay. And if you have Virgo rising, you could look at where's your Mercury, and none of this is really cookie cutter true, but anyway. Okay. Okay. So if you have Virgo rising, you probably have Jupiter in your 10th house or possibly transiting your midheaven. Like I have 11, my ascendant is 11 degrees of Virgo. So I'm in the middle of Virgo, and Jupiter has been going back and forth over my midheaven. And so yeah, so if you have Virgo rising, Jupiter is probably in your 10th house, possibly transiting your midheaven right now, while Saturn is probably in your 7th house. And the nodes of the moon are probably in your 2nd and your 8th houses, and Pluto's probably been in your 5th house. Okay. So, and Uranus, maybe is near your midheaven, depending on the degrees. If you have really early degrees of Virgo rising, probably Uranus is near your midheaven. If you have mid or later degrees of Virgo rising, Uranus isn't going to be on your midheaven for a while. Like Uranus is not going to come to my midheaven for a few years. Again, because I have my midheaven is 13 Gemini, so Uranus moves very slowly. It's not going to get there for quite a while. Uranus for me is very solidly in my 9th house. So, okay, so what does all this mean? Okay, so if you have Virgo rising, chances are there's some way in which you're feeling a sense of expansion with regard to probably both 9th house and 10th house energies. So, maybe your sense of how you learn, how you show up in the world, your belief systems, your conception of just how you conceive of the world might have been really, really expanding and changing this past year. That's definitely true for me, big time. Your role as a teacher might be expanding or changing or aligning more deeply in some way. That's definitely been true for me. If Jupiter's on your midheaven, there might be a way that you're feeling called to expand or free yourself up in terms of how you show up in the world. So there could be a really strong emphasis, possibly, of this more outward dimension of your life. And then at the same time, you have Saturn in Pisces transiting your 7th house. So there could be this sense of, I'm called to expand in these ways in the way I show up in the world, or to realign, or, something along those lines. And yet at the same time, I need to deeply go inward in the way so that I can align, be sure that I'm really clear about what's in alignment for me when I'm in relationship with others. There might be a need to really get clear about your boundaries in relationship with all different kinds of relationships, not just romantic, like all kinds of relationships. And that Saturn in Pisces, if you're a very Piscean person, if you have like planets in here, that Saturn in Pisces might be helping you. You have Jupiter really helping you expand how you're doing things in the world. And then that Saturn in Pisces could be really supporting you to bring in the structures that you need to make that realize itself. Like I talked about in the last video, how for me, yes, there are ways that certainly my visibility and et cetera, all that kind of thing is expanding. And yet I'm needing to kind of slow down in a certain way to make sure that I am being really clear about my boundaries, really clear about what's actually in alignment for me. What am I actually called to do for real in the world? Like I wouldn't want to do every single option out there that wouldn't be good for me or for anybody else, right? And also I've been feeling really called to get certain like business structures in place very, very clearly, like how I pay my taxes and how I, just all of that kind of thing. So the Saturn really supporting the energy going on with Jupiter for me. Yeah. Okay. There's so much more. I could say so many things about so many things, but let's move on to Libra rising now. So this would apply for Libra rising and also the N degrees of Virgo rising. Okay. So Libra rising. If you have Libra rising, similar to Aries rising, you will have, you either already have had or will soon have the nodes of the moon crossing your ascendant and descendant. And these eclipses that we've just had, and this is true for Aries rising also, have been mega powerfully aspecting your chart, like big time. Oh, and I forgot to say with Virgo rising, this is actually true for next year. So Virgo rising and Pisces rising next year or the year after, depending on what degree your ascendant is, you will have the nodes of the moon crossing your ascendant and descendant also in the coming year and a half, because the nodes are about to switch into Pisces and Virgo. And so this year, if you have Libra or Aries rising, the eclipses we've had over the past year, so last October 2023, spring of 2024, and the ones we just had in the last few weeks, those at some point have been very powerfully aspecting your ascendant and descendant. And if you have Virgo rising or Pisces rising, the eclipses coming up in 2025 and then the beginning of 2026 will be right on your ascendant, descendant, depending on which degrees your ascendant is. Okay. So, so for me, the nodes of the moon will be right on my ascendant and descendant at 11 of Virgo and Pisces at the very end of 2025. And so the eclipses of the fall of 2025 and probably the spring of 2026 will really be highlighting my ascendant, descendant. So yeah, so if you have Libra rising, Aries rising, Virgo rising, or Pisces rising, the eclipses now and into next year and even 2026, somewhere in there, the eclipses will really highlight your own identity and how you're relating with others, ascendant, descendant. Big, 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 big deal for all of those ascendant degrees, all of those ascendant signs. Okay. Another big thing, if you have Libra rising, really, really key is that Libra rising, if you have Libra rising, chances are you are a type of person who, again, I've talked about this with even the Aries rising, there's lessons around knowing me versus knowing you. So you probably have had a tendency to focus on the other a lot and be really good at meeting the needs of others. And I'm gonna guess if you're listening to this video, you're now in a time in your life when you're learning in some way how to listen to me, yourself, not me. You're learning how to listen to you deeply. And at the same time, the transiting South Node is also in Libra. So collectively, we're all doing that. We're all learning how to release the old ways of being with that Libra energy and balance that with the North Node in Aries, learning about me, right? And learning how to be in a really clear balance of deeply knowing my own needs, voicing them, and being able to respect and honor my own needs and respect and honor the needs of others at the same time. And it's a huge lesson. It's a gigantic lesson for so many of us. And yeah, and if you have Libra ascendant, that's probably been a lifelong thing for you, like a big lifelong lesson that you've been working with, probably still working with. And so the South Node right now is in Libra, really supporting you to do that, like extra big time. Plus the eclipses, big time helping you do that. And then, yeah, so then you also have Libra rising, probably have Jupiter in your 9th house, coming to your midheaven in Cancer next year. So similar to Virgo rising, this was true for me in this past year, right? If you have Libra rising or N degrees of Virgo rising, it's a lot of similar themes to what I just talked about in terms of really being supported to expand your sense of belief system. How do I conceive of things? Maybe a kind of revolutionary energy around that, and then also expanding how you feel called to show up in the world. And then at the same time, you have Saturn probably in your 6th house, bringing in possibly bringing in stronger structures around your day-to-day living, your taking care of your own body, taking care of yourself, also possibly structures around your work and how you're on a very concrete level supporting yourself in the work, your day-to-day work, and also like taking care of your body. You also, if you have Libra rising, probably have had Pluto transiting your 4th house. So you might be having a strong sense of transformation about in your own way of relating to your inner emotional needs, which would accent this whole South Node in Libra, and your ascendant in Libra energy, right? There might be this really strong theme, and then this would be possibly have been going on for quite a while, around developing a whole new way of relating to your true inner self, your true inner tender needs. Yeah, which is accenting all those things I just talked about. Okay. And then Scorpio rising. So, and again, with Libra, if you have Libra rising, you might want to look at what's going on with your Venus, because Venus is what rules Libra. Scorpio rising, the rulers of Scorpio are Pluto and Mars. So especially Pluto, maybe, Pluto would be particularly powerful for you, especially because depending on what degree your Scorpio rising is, you might be having Pluto squaring your ascendant and descendant right now. If your ascendant is really, really super, super early degrees of Scorpio. And depending on the house system you're using and where you were born, anyway, depending on your houses, Pluto might be crossing your IC, might be going basically between your 3rd house into your 4th house, which is a pretty big shift of energy, and it can be a pretty big deal. But okay, so if you have Scorpio rising, chances are, this is just actually so deeply powerful for you right now. If you have Scorpio rising, interestingly, you also probably have Jupiter transiting your 8th house, which is the house associated with Scorpio energy. So you'd be having this really powerful, you're already Scorpio rising, which means you already probably have this natural tendency or ability to deeply process and there's a calling for you on your soul level to go deep already to begin with, right? And to you're really here in this lifetime probably to be deeply looking into things and to be transforming over this lifetime, like to be doing the caterpillar who goes into the chrysalis who becomes the butterfly, possibly over and over and over and over again. if you happen to be in the Pluto in Scorpio generation, you might have your Pluto right near your ascendant, right? And so that, which would just extra emphasize this, but in any case, if you have Scorpio rising, you also have probably Jupiter in your 8th house. So you're probably being supported to do something that already is pretty natural to your soul. And there's this deep kind of looking at the deeper soul layers of things for you right now. While Pluto is either in your 3rd house or your 4th house and possibly crossing your IC, which again brings like the energy of all of this is just such a deepening of your soul journey at the moment. And then Saturn is transiting probably your 5th house, possibly the end of your 4th house. But probably Saturn is in your 5th house. And so that might be helping you while you're doing this deep transforming kind of energy. Saturn might be supporting you to come into relationship with your inner creative life force. And that creative life force and your relationship to the divine in your creative life force might be a pretty key tool for you right now. And to be, really tapping into that deep soul of you, there might be this dance going on for you between your creativity and like, I don't know, just the image I'm getting, for example, is, again, this is overgeneralizing, but it may or may not resonate for you. For example, maybe if you have Scorpio rising with all these transits going on, possibly what would feel really good is to have an outlet that's like painting or dancing or writing. But I'm feeling like really sensual, like paint, really, or maybe music or whatever it is. But there might be a way I'm feeling with the painting, for example, that would allow all this energy that's trying to move through your being to express itself. And the Saturn in Pisces in your 5th house might be really supporting you to do that. You also would be having probably Neptune in your 5th house, and then the North Node has been transiting your 6th house, but is about to enter your 5th house. So you're getting really strong energy and support in general to be coming into your creativity as a source of healing in a really powerful way as you're doing this deep transformative work. And you as a person, if you have Scorpio rising, probably are here to be doing that deep transformative work anyway. But maybe the creative life force, creative expression could be a really key, beautiful way to let that move. Okay. And let's go now to Sagittarius rising. Okay, so this would apply to Sagittarius rising and the end degrees of Scorpio rising. All right. Okay. If you have Sagittarius rising, you probably have Jupiter in your 7th house, which means that, so if you have Sagittarius rising, it means that you have a Gemini descendant, which means that Jupiter probably already has crossed your descendant or is going to be crossing your descendant this coming next few months. You might, depending again on where, exactly what your degrees are, you might have Uranus coming to your descendant, possibly if you have your ascendant is, like 0, 1, 2 degrees of Sagittarius, then you have Uranus coming to your descendant. And then you have Saturn probably somewhere around your IC, or in your, somewhere in your, well, anyway, in your fourth house-ish, probably in your fourth house. So if you have Sagittarius rising, chances are very good that you're having some kind of expansion or reevaluation of how you are in relationship. So there might be new relationships coming in, or maybe not. I mean, that's not necessarily true. Or there just might be like a way you're exploring, even in yourself, how you're feeling called to relate to others, to the outside world, what we experience as quote unquote outside of ourselves. And that might be through literal, actual relationship, or that might just be internally in the way that you're feeling called to explore what it means to be in a dynamic of back and forth with others. And then at the same time, you also probably have Saturn in Pisces transiting your fourth house. So, and you have the North Node either in your fourth house or about to enter your fourth house. So there's this really, really strong emphasis in your fourth house energy right now. Also with Neptune probably in your fourth house. So on the one hand, you're having this Jupiterian expansion in your consciousness around how you want to relate with others, but also deep, deep, deep support for knowing your inner self. So even if you have, like a new relationship showing up in your world, you might at the same time be feeling like, okay, that's cool, but I'm also feeling really drawn inward, like deeply inward to my inner self. And like I'm wanting to expand into this new relationship or this new way of being in the world in relation to others, but it feels really good. I really need to kind of come into the shell of my own being and just be there, even just in stillness and quiet, because there's a learning about, that inner tender being that is me, that I have to do that right now. Like I really, really have to be with that tender being that is me, even though another part of me maybe is really wanting to express itself out here or be in relationship out here. I also need to really hone the inner me somehow. So that could be very strong. Yeah. And so if you have Sagittarius rising, I would also take a look at Jupiter. So Jupiter is not only in your seventh house, but it's also the ruler of your ascendant. And I would take a look at, where is your own Jupiter? What's going on with your Jupiter? Because that could give you some more clues about, it could just be really interesting. Okay. Moving on to Capricorn rising. So Capricorn rising is ruled by Saturn and Uranus. I especially work with Saturn ruling Capricorn, but I love thinking of Uranus ruling Capricorn also. Okay, so if you have Capricorn rising, then you have been having Pluto transiting your first house, first of all, for many, many years. So that's a big deal. You might have been just over, the past many years, been having a deep sense of transformative energy with regard to who am I. You also, if you have Capricorn rising, then you have a Cancer descendant. So next year, Jupiter will probably be crossing your descendant. And right now Saturn, okay, so Jupiter is currently in your sixth house with Saturn probably in your third house. Yeah. So on the one hand, you might be having the sense of expansion around how you're called to take care of yourself, your day-to-day health, your body, even an expansion around the details of like how you do your work in the day-to-day sense. Like maybe new ideas would be coming in for you around any and all of that, but especially around maybe new methods or ways that you feel called to do your work in the world, or again, maybe around your health, maybe around your relationship with your body. And then at the same time, Saturn and Pisces in your third house, the North Node in your third house, there might be like your focus in your life could actually be possibly could be relatively, I want to say detail oriented. Like I want to get all these ducks in a row. I want to get these T's crossed and these I's dotted. I'm feeling really called, I'm really excited about maybe doing my life differently in these ways and my daily routines and the way I do my work in the world. But I also want to like kind of organize the details, and I want to like maybe even I feel inspired by these details, and I have had these big ideas, like big expansive ways of seeing the world, and now I want to bring it into form, and I want to really hone it in a way that can be accessible by anybody. Or maybe with Saturn in your third house, maybe even you want to, if you've been feeling called to write a book, maybe like now you're really gonna actually write it and really actually work on it in that way. Next year, when the South Node is in Pisces conjunct Saturn, which is going to happen, I think, in March 2025, maybe there'd be like a really big inspiration for you around, again, really crafting a book, or really, I don't know, you start a podcast or a YouTube channel or something around communication that, can come into form in a whole new way, which could be really, really cool and really fun. And right now, maybe you're really like, you're sitting with, how could that look? What would that be like? You're really stewing on it. And maybe Jupiter's helping to expand your ideas about it, because Jupiter's in Gemini, which mirrors third house, which is where the North Node is for you, which is where Saturn is. So there could be just lots and lots of ideas percolating and getting ready to come into form maybe next year, like early next year. So I'll be this with, Capricorn rising with all of this would be really, really cool to look at your actual planets and see, I would be really curious, what planets do you have in third house in particular? Because if you have your sun in Pisces or Aries, in your third house, or your Mercury, especially sun, I would say that would be fascinating. Like if you happen to have Capricorn rising and your sun in your third house, tell me. I'm just so curious how that would feel. Yeah, because that could be really, really fun for you. Okay. And now let's move to Aquarius rising. Okay. So if you have Aquarius rising, if you have your ascendant at the very, 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 very beginning of Aquarius, 0, 1, 2, 3 of Aquarius, or the very, very, very end of Capricorn, you have Pluto right on your ascendant, or it's about to be right on your ascendant. That is a very big deal. It's a really, really huge deal. If you're in those degrees of your ascendant, chances are, I would guess, you're in a time of your life that is deeply transformative. Like, I don't know, you tell me, I'd be shocked and amazed if there's not some humongous transforming energy going on for you in some way around your identity, around any part of all kinds of parts of your life. But but something to remember is that the point of that energy is not just to feel like everything's falling apart. The point is it's the caterpillar going into the chrysalis, becoming the goop, and then eventually becoming the butterfly, right? When Pluto eventually moves on from your ascendant, probably, like if you really are conscious of in this process, probably on the other side of it, you'll be the butterfly and it'll be really cool. But right now might be feeling pretty intense. It's my guess. Again, without knowing you, without knowing your chart, I can't know, but that's probably part of what's going on. At the same time, and that only applies if you're at the very end degrees of Capricorn or the very, very, very first degrees of Aquarius right now. If your ascendant is later on in Aquarius, like, 8 degrees of Aquarius and up, that doesn't apply for you yet, and it won't apply for several years. But yeah. But if you have Aquarius rising in general, probably Jupiter is in your 5th house and Saturn is in your 2nd house. So probably you're having, you might be having the sense of that energy of the Pluto on your ascendant, either there or coming soon. And so the sense of dissolving into the goop in the chrysalis, at the same time that you have Jupiter expanding your sense of the creative life force. So maybe, possibly what you could be feeling is the sense of, like, on the one hand, I'm dissolving. I have no idea even who I am anymore. I don't even know which direction is up and which one is down. But what I do feel is the underlying beauty and magic of life force itself, which doesn't necessarily have form yet, right? It's like those imaginal cells of the caterpillar that will become the butterfly. It's like that level of things. The Jupiter in your 5th house could be really, really expanding the potential latent in those imaginal cells. So you could be feeling like, I have no idea what the heck is going on. I have no idea who the heck I even am, but I can feel there's all this magic. There's all this, so many possibilities in the creative life force of who I am, right? That could be really, really strong. And then at the same time, you have Saturn there in your 2nd house. So possibly, and the North Node in your 2nd house, probably, Neptune in your 2nd house. The North Node will definitely be moving into your 2nd house if it's not there already. So really supporting you to come into, okay, how can I manifest? How can I bring this sense of dissolving? I have no idea who I am, but I can feel the magic in the creative life force that is me. How can I bring this into form that can help me to be comfortable and feel safe in this earth world, right? How can I, like, maybe what could be happening for you, especially if you look for it, is there could be ways that you're getting supported to really ground yourself, to even by your spirit team. Like, this actually, for you, if you haven't looked at it yet, you might feel really supported by the Wholeness Way series, for example, that's free, that's, on my YouTube channel, that you can sign up for. I could imagine with this signature, that Wholeness Way series being an example of how can I both feel myself dissolving and yet feel held and supported in the real, quote unquote, real world. Yeah. Okay. And then last but definitely not least, we have Pisces rising. Okay. So Pisces rising, if you have Pisces rising, then the ruler of Pisces, the rulers are Neptune and Jupiter. And you probably have Jupiter transiting your 4th house with Saturn transiting possibly your ascendant, actually, or your 1st house. So again, depending on what degree your ascendant is, if your ascendant is in the mid degrees of Pisces, that's huge right now. So you would have Saturn sitting right on your ascendant, and you would have the first 2 of the Saturn Jupiter squares would have Saturn right on your ascendant. So, and probably Jupiter sitting on your IC. And the same is true, but flipped for the mid degrees of Virgo rising. So like I have mid degrees of Virgo rising, and I have Saturn sitting on my descendant. Jupiter has been going back and forth over my MC, right? So it's opposite of Pisces rising. So if you have mid degrees of Pisces rising, you have Saturn on your ascendant, Jupiter probably crossing back and forth over your IC. And Saturn near either it already has crossed your ascendant, or maybe it's right there, or it will be crossing your ascendant. That's in Pisces. Is like if you have Pisces rising, I would guess chances are that you're probably very, very, very sensitive. You're probably very tuned into the spirit world. And depending on the rest of your chart, if you don't have a lot of strong earth energy in your chart in general, you might, as a Pisces rising person, you might have a hard time kind of being grounded, being here. If that might not be true at all. I mean, I know plenty of Pisces rising people where that's not true because they have lots of grounding elements also. But this Saturn being in Pisces, crossing your Pisces ascendant, might be feel really good for you. It might be feeling really supportive for just giving you a sense of grounding, a sense of structures that you really, really need. That you like, it's amazing. You probably have all kinds of connections to the magical realms and all of that, but maybe a harder time feeling like held and secure and safe right here, like kind of more the base chakra, earthy, grounded sense. So Saturn in Pisces probably has been really, really supportive and probably continues to be really supportive for you, just like really bringing you here to Earth. You also have probably Neptune in Pisces in your 1st house, possibly into your 2nd house now. That well, it'd be moving into anyway, yeah. Neptune also is in your 1st house, so maybe not necessarily supporting you to be so grounded, but it'd be this combination of you both really connecting with the spirit world and being supported by Saturn to be grounded and present here in this 3D world too, and to integrate the two really strongly. And at the same time, you have Jupiter in your 4th house, expanding your connection to your own inner tender needs and all of that. So you're really getting this very tender kind of energy going on. And you probably have the South Node transiting your 8th house, possibly your 7th house, and North Node in 2nd, moving into your 1st house. So, like in general, you're probably getting, again, really supported for you to come into you and the tender you, but to be getting a sense of structure for that tender you in a new way, and a sense of healing around what it is to be embodied as Earth. So Chiron transiting your 2nd house. Yeah, it could be, a time when you're really like the tenderness and the pain even of what it is to be so sensitive and open to the world. you could be getting a sense of noticing that pain, but also really feeling supported around being such a tender, sensitive being, and yet being okay being in the 3D world as that sensitive, tender being with lots and tons of gifts probably to give the world too, right? But you need to be supported and nurtured yourself. And so yeah, these energies would probably be supporting that. Okay. That's every sign. We did it. Yeah, that was actually fascinating for me. So, tell me what's helpful about that, what's not helpful about that. How did it feel when I'm talking about your sign or the sign, right after yours? Um, what's accurate or not accurate? Because again, these are not, the cookie cutter is just not going to be true a lot of the time. And you really have to look at how the whole picture plays out in your chart, with your planets and your own exact ascendant degree. And yeah, so it's not an exact science whatsoever. And then you're going to be you. You're going to be the the unique being that is you, and your spirit is what is infusing the truth of all of this, right? And so what's true for you. And these are just things to percolate on, not like blanket statements at all. But yeah, I would love to hear what was resonating, what's not resonating, what's helpful, what's not helpful. I would love to know. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.